So apparently, this chapter of My Hero Academia was rather controversial. There is a large part of the community that did not like chapter 289 to be exact, so we're not mixing up chapter numbers. And the thing is after rereading this chapter multiple times since it came out this past Sunday to this very day, I have been trying to figure out why. And I even went on social media to kind of see what's going on there, why people don't like it, etc. And the best things I could really find about the whole ordeal is that people don't like this chapter because there wasn't a straight up fight between Toga and Ochako, but also apparently there isn't any weight or like death in this arc, and I'm just like, what? Like, okay, so, let me dive into all this, okay? Let's get into the weight and death first, because that, I think, is so easy to talk about before I get into the Toga and Ochako stuff, because that's a big part of what the chapter's about. So anyways, when it comes to the whole weight of the arc and death and stuff, if that is the complaint of this chapter, I'm just like, have we been reading the same manga? Are we legitimately reading the same manga? Because we clearly are not. If you have not been reading this manga, then obviously you'd think that there is no weight. But if you have, then you would know that we have, like, a majority of the top 10 pro heroes are legitimately dead or missing. You have, like, multiple characters that just died in front of us. You have entire cities being rampaged by Gigan, roaming through city after city, dozens of cities. Then you have Shigaraki's destruction quirk literally decaying everything throughout an entire city. And then we have Aizawa's loss of limb. And then we also have what happened to our bunny hero. We have the stuff with Endeavor currently and what's about to probably happen with Dabi coming in. I mean, there's so much. I mean, Bakugo, for example. We had the whole situation with, Izuku's mentor. I mean, there's more and more you could continuously add on to this pile of casualties that has happened throughout this arc of My Hero Academia. And if this is what someone's complaining about, saying there is no weight, there's no saving. There's no talking or saving to anyone that thinks there is no weight to this arc after everything that has already happened thus far. But anyways, let's get into the next point. The other thing I could see people kind of getting upset about, and that is the Ochako and Toga stuff. So apparently, from what I could find, was that the reason why some were angry was because we didn't have a straight-up fight between both of these characters. And many believe because of the conclusion of the last chapter, that's what we were going to get. And I can kind of understand on that part. I can understand why some would believe you were going to get a fight. But at the same time, you got to remember what the whole point of Toga's purpose of going to find Ochako was in the first place. It was about her getting confirmation on her feelings, confirmation on how she feels about Twice's death, how she feels about hero society and villain society. She wanted information. That's all she really wanted. That's what she was seeking. And anything else that was added onto that was just flair that Horikoshi Sensei himself was throwing in. For instance, any fights, etc. And so it was never about a straight up fist fight between the characters. That's not what it was about. It was about Toga getting information. So anyone that truly just wanted a fight did not understand the purpose of Toga even getting off of Gigan's back to go find Ochako and Izuku. The whole purpose was her getting clarification on everything, clearing her mind of everything she currently has going on within it. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted a fight, this is not your manga. I mean, yes, there's some good fights. We've had constant back-to-back fights, but this series isn't just dedicated to fights. There's so much more. The main overarching story is about how Hero Society isn't perfect and it's broken and it needs some form of answer. And, the villains may not be the answer as well, but there needs to be something that's done where there's some middle ground between both. And that's what's going on here. And so if you only want fights, this is not going to be your type of manga. I don't know how you haven't realized that yet if you're still reading this manga over 200 chapters deep, but that's the point. But okay, let's actually get in to the meat of this chapter. I'm sorry I had to do a little mini rant because it agitates me seeing people so up in arms about something that just like, really? Yeah, okay, I'm done. Let's actually get in to Toga and Ochako and actually the true message of what this chapter is about. So, looking at this chapter, I 100% feel so bad for Toga after this because it's very clear after rereading this chapter and looking at what she was trying to say to Ochako that she was giving a desperate plea, a cry for help. but Ochako smacked her hand away. That's exactly what happened when you look at this chapter, and let me explain scene by scene. So basically, we know that at this point in time, Toga, she doesn't really know how to express herself. She kind of, in her own way, doesn't understand how to have empathy for others. She only has her own viewpoint on things. She doesn't know how to put herself in other people's shoes. And it's kind of ironic, someone that is able to turn into others, she doesn't know how to understand their actual viewpoint. She puts her own viewpoints on that person, and that's how they're supposed to be. But it makes sense because of her overall upbringing. She has been kind of pushed and shoved down in society. She's someone that has not been able to be herself. She's constantly repressed herself, and because of these things, she's not been able to kind of form a nice mental state to be able to deal with different problems that, she encounters throughout life. She is not very stable as a person, and we know her origin story. She was someone that was continuously pushed down where she couldn't use her quirk, because if she used her quirk, it would make it seem like, she was a villain. She had a villain-like quirk, and we know at this point in time of the story, quirks are more deeper than just an added attachment of an ability. It's like an overall new trait to your very essence, and it could cause problems. It could cause it to where you might have an urge to suck someone's blood. You might have an urge to literally decay things around you. Shigaraki, for an example. You have these individuals that are kind of cursed with some of these little attributes to their overall psyche, and Toga is one of those individuals that were just very unlucky. She was just born with a quirk that just craved the blood of others, and attaching on love with that just makes it so much worse. And the best way to kind of explain Toga, she's a vampire. That's the easiest way to really explain it. If you know anything about mythology, lore, fantasy, and stuff like that, and you know about vampires, vampires, they have that endless hunger, that hunger for blood, and they can be very nice and kind, gentle, but when they're starving, they're mad and hungry, they will do anything to get that blood that they need to survive. They can't help themselves. This is what many stories throughout the years has taught us about vampires, if you are interested in those type of stories. And Toga is a good example of this. She's basically a vampire that can't hold back her urges. She tries to suppress it. She tries to hold back that urge for blood, but she still goes after it because eventually that hunger overcomes her. And it's not necessarily right for her to fully suppress herself either, because eventually, as she continues to suppress herself, it's going to make it much worse when she finally explodes with that bloodlust. And we saw what has happened throughout the story, especially in her past, and what caused her fall to become what she is right now. So suppressing, Toga's urges is never a good thing, because finally when she does get that taste of blood, she can't hold back. She has no way to really stop herself. She hasn't learned how to control herself. And that's something that's very entwined with vampire stories when it comes to stuff like that, is that a vampire that doesn't drink a lot of blood, but, after holding it back for so long, they finally drink it, they don't know how to control themselves, and they usually kill their victims. And you have the other vampires that know how to drink blood and take little sips, and they're able to be a-okay. It's, obviously they prey on people, but it's at the same time they know not how to completely end someone. And that's the huge point here, is that Toga was never given that option of learning how to mingle in. She was instantly dedicated as someone that society deemed irredeemable, someone that, or society deemed that you shouldn't be around. And every time she tried to exhibit her personality and what she had as a person, she was continuously ridiculed and say, you cannot be this. And so she thought it was okay. It was normal to be repressed. But, we know what actually happened in the end. She finally rose up and became what she was. And so when you see her talk to, Ochako in this chapter, she tries to explain from her perspective. She's like, listen, Ochako, I have been filled with this bloodlust for a very long time. I don't know how to control it. I have no idea what to really do. Ever since I was little, I was told I can't do this, can't do that, and it makes sense. She's like, I understand that, but she's like, I was never able to really overcome it, because I was constantly told to repress it, and eventually it boiled to the surface to where I couldn't control it no longer, which led me down to where I'm at right now. She was pleading for help from Ochako. She was like, this is what I am. I can't help it. There's nothing I could do about it, and that's why I do these things I do, why I do these unexplainable things that seem so evil. And as she continues to explain, she eventually continues to fight, Ochako, and she tells Ochako, like, also, as this continued to happen, eventually I met this woman, this news reporter, that was like, oh, your life, it's so sad and miserable, I'm so sorry for you, and then decided to try to get rid of me right then and there. And she's like, I felt very happy in that moment when I carried her into the sky. I was able to use your quirk and get rid of her right then and there. And when we look at that situation, it seems like you have it to where, Toga was very happy that she ended someone. Like, she was so happy that person's lights just were cut out right then and there. But that wasn't what really Toga was trying to get across. She was trying to say, because of me repressing my feelings, because of me being what I am, eventually it boils to the surface to where I do these despicable things. I do these acts to where I actually harm others, and I don't want to actually do that. And that's what she was trying to say to Ochako. It's like, I don't want to do this, but I did, and these are the feelings that boil inside of me when it does happen. I feel happy. I feel grateful that I can do these things, and she was trying to explain that in the best way she can, and obviously it was very complicated to understand, because from Ochako's perspective, anything that deals with harm to others, anything that's anti-hero, is bad, instantly bad, and, you need to be silenced, put down, you need to be in prison, whatever. You cannot talk about that stuff. And so Ochako's opinion was already set in stone right then and there. Toga is not a good person whatsoever, and she didn't understand what Toga was trying to explain to her in that moment. She was, once again, asking for help, a cry for help for it, and, like, what can she really do? Is there an answer that Ochako could give her? And as the conversation continued, Ochako's like, you need to explain to me, what are you really trying to say? And eventually, as they continue to fight, Ochako drops this little figurine that Izuku gave her a while back, as we know. And you have Toga grab it, it's like, oh, this must be very important to you. And it's explained that reminding us that Izuku's the one that gave it to Ochako. And she's like, I thought so. And she's like, Jin twice was taken from me. He was taken from me, and he was like a big brother, and now you're having this. So she's like, I understand now what this feels like to you. This probably is like something very precious to you, like how a big brother feels to me. And she was trying to relate with Ochako in the best way she can. It was Toga trying to have empathy. She was trying to actually show empathy for Ochako, trying to understand from an actual different point of view for once. Not like she normally does in forcing herself on someone. She was truly trying to understand Ochako in that exact moment, which is a huge jump in character development for her. But on top of that, too, though, she was like, okay, so this is, very important to you, but she also is trying to compare someone's life with an object. And that is something that shows, once again, how Toga hasn't matured enough. She, once again, is still learning how it feels to have empathy and loss of life. She knows how it feels, but she doesn't know how to properly express it. And that comes through with the way she talks to Ochako. And so she doesn't know how to explain it, but it looked like she was comparing life to the actual figurine. Then as it continues, she starts to talk to Ochako about, how she's repressing her love for Izuku, and how Toga is repressing her quirk because the society deems it not right. And in a way, both of these things are very identical, because Ochako, the reason why she's repressing her love for Izuku is for she could be a hero, for she could be where she's at right now. Because if she has feelings for Izuku and lets it get in the way, it could cause problems where people could use it against her. For instance, we gotta think about All Might's teacher and how she kind of gave away her grandson and her son and all that to be able to stop All for One. So it's very similar to that circumstance with what's going on with Ochako. She is thinking about being a hero instead of actually having a life and a family. And that's what Toga was trying to explain, is that you're just like me. You're kind of repressing your desires to be where you're at. But in all honesty, Ochako's desires are nothing in comparison to Toga's. Toga's is definitely much deeper, because she literally has a villainous-like quirk, and she can't control it. She legitimately can't repress it for long, or it'll bubble to the surface, while someone like Ochako, she can go her entire life repressing it and have regrets, but it's never going to be the cause of her doing something absolute evil and despicable. But that was the whole point of that. So she was comparing her situation to Ochako. So once again, she was trying to understand empathy. She was trying to understand Ochako without trying to force herself on top of Ochako. Then, going much further, Ochako's like, if you're going to continue doing things and living the way you want, then you must live with the consequences. This is also expressed in a way to show that Ochako was saying, look, your way of life is irredeemable. You are not someone that can ever fit into society. And you see Toga start to cry, and she realizes what that means. She's basically being told that no matter what, you will have to repress yourself. You have to stay repressed. If you do not stay repressed, then you're going to be unfit for this society. But at the same time, she also says live. So it's a double-edged sword there when it comes to that conversation. The way you can interpret that is that Toga realized that Ochako was telling her, you can't live like you are, but if you do, you will still be able to live. So she got both sides of that. Ochako wasn't able to see eye to eye with her, but she was actually able to say, you don't need to die. So I feel like the way she took that, she realized most likely that Twice died thanks to a bad hero, which was Hawks. And Ochako, even though she wants, Toga to, repress herself, she doesn't want her necessarily to die. So she realizes that there is good and bad heroes, and she got the clarification that she actually wanted. So this is a really good dialogue between the characters. And it's very clear that, once again, Ochako failed, I think, as a hero. Well, I'll take that back. She did a good job as a hero, but she failed as a person for understanding. She didn't save the life that was in front of her. You know what? Actually, technically, yes, she did fail as a hero. She didn't save the life that was begging for help in front of her. She didn't understand those cues. She was blinded by her justice of being a hero and didn't understand what it truly meant to be a hero in helping and saving others. And it makes me wonder what Izuku would have done in that moment. Would he have done the exact same thing as Ochako? Or would he have done a different alternate and tried to understand Toga and try to help her out? There's so many questions I have about that, but it's a very powerful scene just to see that, Toga is changing. She has changed quite a bit, and you can see that just from this chapter alone. Once again, people saying this chapter is disappointing because of Toga and Ochako. What, are we reading the same manga? But okay, anyways, last but not least of the chapter, we have Ida, and we also have Hado heading to the scene, which this is a very short part to talk about, but they're heading over to the, the battle that's going on with Shigaraki and all the other heroes, and Ida being there, it does have me worried to a certain degree, and the reason why is because of this one quick frame of Izuku being on the ground and Ida looking back at him. It reminds me a lot of the Stain arc. If you all don't remember in the Stain arc, which has caused Ida's development to this point right now, was when Ida was going off the rails, doing things by himself, and trying to take down Stain, get vengeance, etc. And if you remember, Todoroki and Izuku had to pop up to help out Ida. And Ida was on the ground, paralyzed, if you remember. And it's very eerily identical to what's going on with Izuku, because Izuku's technically kind of paralyzed on the ground right now. He's definitely not going to be able to move for a while. I'd be very shocked if he's able to do something. I mean, he might force himself through sheer will, but I don't think Izuku's really going to be able to do much at this point. And seeing Ida and Todoroki right there in front of Izuku is super jarring, because it reminds me of the Stain fight, and I do wonder if this is where Ida might potentially die, if we're going to have a really important character, a part of our class, die. And if that does happen, yikes, that's going to be sad, because Ida's a good character, I like him, but it would make sense, thinking about everything and all the characters that technically have had their character development, and their character development's kind of continued or finished at this point. I think that Ida is definitely up for the chopping block for any other character. But yeah, that's just definitely something I wanted to mention, is that reminds me of that. And speaking of which, Hado as well being there, incredibly important too, because you gotta remember, Hado, her quirk is designed to take on larger targets, but larger targets that kind of move a little bit slower, and I don't really think Yagan moves very slow. I mean, if we look at everything that's been going on in all these chapters, but Hado is designed to take on larger targets, so I do think that her being there is definitely trying to say, or Horikoshi's trying to nod, that Hado is probably going to be taking on Gigan, which is kind of scary to think about. Then you have Todoroki that's probably going to have to be fighting Dabi and also dealing with Shigaraki as well. So it's going to be, it's definitely going to be an interesting one just seeing that. And speaking of Dabi, by the way, I don't know how many, well, I think everybody knows it, but Dabi was like this. He's like, oh, get the camera ready, ma. Like, get the camera ready. We're about to see something crazy going on here. We're about to have the exposure of Endeavor. So I think some things are about to get really ridiculous in these upcoming chapters. It's finally time for the reveal of Toya and Dabi. We're going to get to probably see it firsthand in the upcoming chapters. I'm pretty excited for it. But I think I want to wrap this up here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.